If you've only joined us recently and are wondering, hey, I thought The Haunted School was next. I actually reviewed that book years ago, back when the Goosebumps Monthly was a yearly Halloween special. The Haunted School did turn out to be one of my favorite books in the series, so if you'd like to check out that old video, there's a link in the description below. And so we find ourselves at our second werewolf book for the series. It's interesting because for his many, many faults, R.L. Stine doesn't seem to stick to any given mythology and pretty much starts from scratch whenever he returns to an idea. This is a bad thing when it comes to direct sequels, like the heavily contradictory Monster Blood books, but for books otherwise unrelated, it does keep things fresh. To get a bit ahead of ourselves, the werewolves in this book work completely differently from the werewolves in The Werewolf of Fever Swamp, and I think that's a neat exercise in creativity. Our protagonist today is Alex, a city kid with an interest in photography. His parents are out of the country on a business trip, so the boy is spending 2 weeks with his Aunt Marta and Uncle Colin in their tiny little home in the town of Wolf Creek, named after all the wolves that used to live in the surrounding forest until they were wiped out. Marta and Colin are also photographers. They spend their evenings going out into the woods to take pictures of nocturnal animals, so the three have a lot to talk about. It's also a few days until Halloween, and just because he's visiting doesn't mean Alex isn't going to get in on that trick-or-treat action. What do you want to be for Halloween, Alex? I didn't have to think about it. I'd already decided back home. A werewolf, I told Aunt Marta. No! She screamed. Uncle Colin also let out a cry. The van plowed right through a stop sign. I flew off the seat and hit the door hard, and stared helplessly through the bouncing windshield as we swerved into the path of a roaring truck. Uncle Colin swerved onto the grassy shoulder. I saw a blur of red and heard the truck roar past. Its horn blared angrily. Did I say werewolf? I meant, Tailwolf, the 70th governor of Delaware. That'll really, spook some people. Marta and Colin are pretty quiet about what all this was about, but let slip that it has something to do with their next-door neighbors, the Marlings. They live very private lives in a very run-down house, and Alex is banned from ever going near there. But not all the neighbors are off-limits. There's a girl named Hannah that lives down the street who visits Marta and Colin quite often. Her name is Hannah. She's very cute. You should make friends with her so you won't be lonely. Cute. Any boys in the neighborhood? I asked. There is no heterosexual reading of that passage. Still, Hannah seems pretty nice, and the two kids hit it off quickly. Hannah takes Alex into the woods to explore, where they meet 2 other kids of their age, Sean and Arjun. Hey, an Indian American kid. Looks like you're actually making an effort there, Stine. These two talk about how they found a decapitated deer head out in the woods, and then start teasing Alex for his photography hobby, grabbing his very expensive camera and playing around with it. Eventually they scurry off and Alex goes home, but realizes, oh no, I didn't bring my camera inside. It's still out in the woods. So he rushes out in the middle of the night. I stepped over a fallen tree branch and moved deeper into the woods. The trees began to hiss, the leaves shaking in the rising wind. I could still hear the owl's steady whoo, whoo in the distance. My flashlight dimmed, then brightened again. Its thin circle of light made a path for me between the trees. Hey, we're doing pretty good on the atmosphere here. This is a properly scary moonlit forest. Kudos. Alex finds his camera, but also starts hearing strange, howling noises, and then stumbles on large, canine-like footprints. But aren't the wolves in this area wiped out? There's also some surprisingly graphic descriptions of animal remains. Something's hunting in the woods and turning their prey into pulp. The animal tracks lead directly to the Marling's house, but Alex doesn't find anything while poking around and goes back to his room. The next morning, Marta gets off the phone and tells Alex that the Marlings saw him snooping around their house and threatened to call the cops. She doubles down on her warning, don't mess with the Marlings. So Alex still has to go to school, despite the fact that he's only going to be in Wolf Creek for 2 weeks. If it was going to be like a month or longer, I could see a temporary transfer, but I've done the 2-week thing before, and I just got a bunch of worksheets from my teachers ahead of time. Aunt Marta and Uncle Colin work from home, so they don't need the school as babysitting services. I guess it's just something to do. Enjoy being completely out of sync with the classes for 2 weeks, Alex. It's fortunate that he does go, however, because this is how we get our werewolf lore dump. One of the teachers, Mr. Sheen, starts talking about Halloween, which moves to discussion of werewolves. When he asks the class who here believes in werewolves, all the kids except Alex raise their hand, and Mr. Sheen starts explaining what a werewolf in this book is. The werewolf must rage and howl, Mr. Sheen continued, and prowl the woods or forest in search of victims. At daybreak, the werewolves must shed their wolf skin. They return to human form. They must hide their wolf skin until the next night. They must hide the skin in a safe place, because if someone takes the werewolf skin and burns it, the werewolf will die. There's a lot of jokes I could make, but come on, furry jokes are so 2004. Now, it's possible that Arlstein took some inspiration from the skinwalker of Navajo culture. There were a number of works around this time that connected Native American folklore with the Western pop culture versions of werewolves. The same year this book was published, there was a film called Werewolf, which you may remember from Mystery Science Theater 3000.
Skinwalker?
Skinwalker. Texas Skin Ranger.
In 1994, there was the X-Files episode Shapes, where they incorrectly identified the Navajo skinwalker with the Algonquian Manitou.
For centuries, Indians have believed in a creature that was half man, half wolf.
Each victim was ripped to shreds.
Friday,
Oh my god.
the legend returns to kill.
What did you see?
Don't miss the X-Files, Friday at 9, 8 Central.
Both of these things suck. Now, the difference between those works and this book is that, wisely, Arlstein doesn't make any direct appropriation of Navajo folklore, and simply uses the broader idea of putting on a creature's skin to become that creature. And it might even just be a coincidence. Stein had already written books about evil monster costumes, but I'd be remiss not to mention the possibility. Alex is surprised that so many people in this town believe in werewolves. While talking to Hannah, she starts theorizing that the Marlings are werewolves, and Sean and Arjun reappear and offer to show Alex a real-life werewolf in the woods tonight. This is actually a prank. The two boys intend to leave Alex lost in the woods, but it doesn't happen, however, because when Alex tries to leave in the middle of the night, he finds that his bedroom door is locked from the outside, and there are now bars over his windows. Unable to escape, he waits until morning and confronts his aunt and uncle, who admit to setting this up so that Alex doesn't sneak out and upset the neighbors again. Well, Alex isn't having it. The next evening, he puts some gum in the door latch to keep it from fully closing, then sneaks out with his camera. He's gonna photograph a werewolf or die trying. Alex is a fun protagonist. Scared, but not scared into paralysis. Genuinely curious about what's going on. Eventually, he finds what he's looking for. 2 massive werewolves, howling and hunting through the forest. Alex follows from a distance as the werewolves terrorize a baby deer and quite graphically tear apart and eat a rabbit. A shocking amount of animal gore in this book. Alex follows the pair all night, and as the sun rises, the 2 werewolves return to the Marlings' home, where they shed their skins and reveal themselves to be dum-dum-dum, Aunt Marta and Uncle Colin. So yeah, the Marlings don't exist. They're a cover story, so nobody goes into this extra house where Marta and Colin store their werewolf skins for the day. Their story about going into the woods to photograph nocturnal animals was a lie. They're actually going out, killing rabbits, and probably doing more adult stuff, but this is a kid's book, so we're not going to address it. Alex, now terrified that he's sharing a house with 2 werewolves, confides in Hannah and eventually convinces her. They consider destroying the skins, but Alex doesn't want to kill his aunt and uncle. They haven't hurt anybody, they're not evil. But maybe, if they keep the werewolf skins away from Marta and Colin for a whole night, the magic will be undone, and the 2 will be cured. It's Halloween, so it's easy enough to put the skins in their trick-or-treat bags and slip away unnoticed. Oh, never mind, they're going to wear the skins! Hannah suggests it, and she actually has a reason we'll touch on in a bit, but Alex is shockingly on board. Yep, let's put the cursed wolf flesh directly onto our skin. I'm somehow confident that won't turn me into a werewolf. And if Marta and Colin see us, I'm sure they won't recognize their cursed property. Anyway, Marta and Colin see them wearing the werewolf skins pretty much immediately, and they give chase, panicked as the full moon starts to affect them. Give us back our skins! Give us back our skins! We must have run for blocks. It all became a dark blur to me. My heavy wolf paws thumped the ground. I struggled to keep my balance. Sweat poured down my face inside the heavy fur. Another turn, more dark backyards, and then the tilting, tangled trees of the woods in front of us. Hannah and I dove into the woods, darting between the trees and tall weeds. And still my aunt and uncle came after us, chanting their desperate plea. Give us back our skins! Give us back our skins! Alright, that's pretty unnerving. But it's also very quick. Marta and Colin are separated from their werewolf skins for like 15 minutes, tops. And then they stop, smile, and go, "Hey, we're cured. Thank you, kids." So they all go home, and Alex gets out of the werewolf skin, but Hannah won't take hers off. Hannah stepped up beside me, her eyes locked on mine. "I didn't wear the one from the house, Alex," she said softly. "I used my own. I just got it last night." "Huh?" I cried. I don't get it." "You will," she whispered. She knocked me on the floor with her heavy forepaws and sank her teeth into my chest. And that's how the book ends. Best case scenario, Alex is turned into a werewolf, but just as likely, Alex is killed. Hardcore. I quite liked Werewolf Skin. It's a very simple story, which is perfect because it allows the book more focus on atmosphere, which it has in spades. The segments out in the woods are properly dark, dangerous, and full of unknowns. It's like it actually wants to be scary or something. The amount of animal gore is no doubt a turnoff for some of you, but it gives the story a real thread of violence, something Goosebumps rarely accomplishes. I appreciated how much of the story was left a mystery. Like, why does everyone in Wolf Creek believe in werewolves? How many werewolves are actually out there? How did all of this come to be? It's the right kind of missing backstory that makes you fill in the gaps yourself without there being any plot holes. My criticisms are relatively minor. Photography is a major element in the story. 3 of the main characters are photographers, and Alex goes werewolf hunting in order to get photographic evidence of werewolves. It's a little weird then that photography doesn't factor into the plot more. Like, Alex never even develops his photos to prove his story to Hannah. Or you could have had it with Alex not getting a good look at the 2 werewolves as they turn back to human, but the camera gets a much more clear look. So when he develops the pictures, oh no, it was Aunt Marta and Uncle Colin. And if you really wanted to get morbid and lean into Alex getting killed in the end, Alex could mail the photos off to a journalist or National Geographic or something, and somebody from the presses drives to Wolf Creek to try and track down Alex to get his story. But Alex is long gone. Alex succeeded in his dreams of being a famous photographer. Too bad he didn't live to see it. Maybe that's too dark, and really it's not a big deal. When the biggest complaint I can throw at your story is, you didn't quite tie the bow on the photo subplot as tidy as I'd like, you know you pulled off something pretty great. Goosebumps really was firing on all cylinders near the end, huh? Werewolf Skin and The Haunted School were both really great at creating a mood and presenting something genuinely dangerous feeling. If Goosebumps was like this consistently, I'd be a lot nicer to it. Only 2 more to go, huh? What am I even going to do with myself? I give Werewolf Skin a crisp $5 bill out of 10.